So I created this little gradient using the freeform gradient tool right here in Adobe Illustrator. Just kind of shifted some colors around here because I wanted to be able to test it out on a colorful background to see how it also translates. Because we also want to have a white version of our logo that's just pure one color and white. We need to make sure it works well there too. So that's how it would look in all white. You kind of lose a little bit of the detail here by making it all white, but that's okay because you can always use a little bit of a drop shadow there to indicate the bending of the wave. But I think that works pretty well there. And we got to keep seeing how flexible our logo is. We need to now do a gray version. So let's go ahead and copy this, a black and white gray version. So, you know, an easy way to do this is go up to edit colors, and I'm just going to be going down to convert to grayscale. It'll convert everything to grayscale for me. I may need to go in and brighten up some colors or put a little bit more darker ink in there. So I think it adapts well to black and white, so that's great. It's good news. So you can see how we're putting it in different environments and it's doing well, so that's a good sign. So we have all these different environments that it works well on, and this is also what you want to present to the client, is showing how flexible it is and that you thought about all the different scenarios, because it could be embroidered, it can be printed on a metal sign, and you're going to need to have all these different options of one color. You're going to need to have it on a darker background, and then you need to have some full color detailed versions as well. So we've made a lot of progress. I'd love to kind of test this out, putting it on some products, because in client presentation that's also really good. But before we do that, we're going to do a client presentation page. We're going to pretty much get this all final. So let's get this in a position where we can present it to a client. We're going to open up a new document. And we're going to do a series of 8.5 by 11, or whatever kind of standard is in your country. We're going to do an 8.5 by 11 inch document. And we're going to present, let's say they've already approved the concept, but they haven't seen it adapted in the final type choices yet. So we're going to present them with both of these versions. The horizontal, we're going to put lots of white space between this in terms of the presentation. And we're going to do the darker line first. And you could do your client presentations however you'd like. I have that other downloadable resource if you kind of like how I did it there. I like to kind of explain a little bit about what they're seeing. It always kind of helps. So this is what I have for one of the pages for my client presentation. And what's great about this is if you're doing this for a personal logo, you can always have this as a fantastic portfolio piece, a portfolio PDF, or just some great images to put on your portfolio. So be thinking about that as well as you get to kind of constructing that logo design portfolio. So this is kind of one where I'm showing the flexibility of the logo. So we have all the different backgrounds. We also want to present the color palette, have the hex codes. I borrowed this from my document that you can also download right here. So I just kind of borrowed that so I can easily adapt everything so that we can present the logo. We're also going to present it in grids the same way we did with this logo. So I'm just going to do my hex colors here. I'm just going to go ahead and do my adaptations. You can also name these colors. I know a lot of people do that. You start getting a little bit more into the branding side of things, so the logo presentation. But that's okay. That's all wrapped up together sometimes when you're a logo designer. There's a logo palette we can go ahead and load. And I like to kind of use some similar colors in my presentation that I have in the brand, just to kind of be consistent. So just making that a lighter color. So if we went out of our way to use the golden ratio logo, we also adapted this to grids. And I think it really shows a certain level of professionalism when we think about grids, when we think about the golden ratio. And of course, not every logo needs the golden ratio, but when you do, I think it really goes a long way in presenting your logo, that you used a method, you used a process to make it come up with what you did. You just didn't slap it together. There was a process, there was a formula, so definitely show that. We're going to show the grid. I got this grid system from this over here. Right here, the downloadable resource, I was able to kind of copy and paste that grid. So make sure if you ever want any of that stuff, you can easily grab it in that downloadable resource so you don't have to create it from scratch. I just need to make that a little bit darker. So let's grab our horizontal logo presentation. how we had it before. There's so many ways you can show the flexibility of a logo and a logo mark presentation. So in this sample, we have a watermark. So we had a nice, easy logo that can adapt to a watermark. And I think in this new logo, I think we have that same chance to show that off as well. Also, there's other ways you can present it. You can actually put it on a t-shirt and a couple of products as well and show the logo application. And we're going to do that too. So let's do the watermark, and then we're going to put it on a water bottle, and we're also going to put it on yoga pants and a couple other things, maybe a t-shirt, to kind of really show how the logo looks on products. Because that's really important when you're doing a logo design, is seeing it in real life. And sometimes getting a real thing printed is not practical, but there's some awesome mock-ups you can download, Photoshop mock-ups, that we're going to use. So let's do the watermark. And let's grab the grayscale version, because I think that's going to adapt to a watermark a lot easier than a color. And all we have to do is reduce the gray quite a bit, so they could put this on the back of a letterhead and still read the type over top of it. Because usually watermarks have type on top of it. You want to make sure it's still legible. So we can just mark that as watermark. So there we have it. We have a social media, we have a watermark, we have the golden ratio, the grid system, our color palettes, our adaptations on different backgrounds. I think if your logo fails some of these tests, you're going to find out when you start to develop this particular presentation. You're going to find out if it doesn't work in a single color. You're going to find out if it doesn't work in black and white. And you're going to find out if it doesn't adapt well as a watermark or a social media image. This is a great test to put your logo through. And as you work your logo through this, you're going to be making some tweaks and changes to your logo for the better, so it becomes flexible. So next, we're going to do our final thing. We're going to put this logo on products to see how it actually looks, so we can really present that in our portfolio, present it to our clients, and also test out the logo to see if it's worth continuing with a particular design. Welcome to Adobe Photoshop. We're now in Photoshop, and I downloaded a great template. I'm going to go ahead and put the link in the resource guide to lots of different resources you can use to put your logo on mockups. And it's from graphicburger.com. This is a yoga pants, which would be very fitting for the type of client that we have. And if you haven't messed with mockups, I'm going to do this first one slower so you guys can get a chance to learn how these work. So what we're going to do is you're going to see, usually you'll see these little red highlights right here. This is how you know that's the layer you can modify with your logo. So I'm going to double click right here in this area. I'm not going to double click on this mask. This is a layering mask. We're not even going to touch those. We're just going to double click right here on the red layer. It's going to open up a new window, and this is going to load right here on this little belt here. So I'm going to load in our little logo. We're just going to do our one color logo right here, because that's going to work better without the type. So we're just bringing in the logo mark. We're going to make it kind of a size. We might need to go back and adjust it, and we'll do that just to test it out. And so what we're going to do is we're going to close this new tab that opened up, and it's going to ask us to save it. So we're going to save it. It's going to run an algorithm. It's going to run a script, and it's going to automatically adapt it to the mock-up. So now we know that's a little bit big. So let's open it back up. And let's make it a lot smaller right there in the center. And let's go ahead and close it up, save it, and it's going to automatically populate. Once again, I might want to make it a little bit smaller yet again. And hopefully this will be the last time. Make sure it's centered. right there. You see that little pink line? That's how I know it's centered. Close the tab, automatically populate. And now we can even adapt it to some similar colors. So if you go down here, you see the purple, and you can always tell what layer you are on by toggling it on and off. So that is the belt, and this is the base right here. So we can make it all white pants if we want. We can even bring in some of our branded colors, and I got a hex code here. So I can copy and paste my hex code and double click and bring that in here. I'm just going to paste it right here in the hex code. Click OK. I can bring in our lighter color, and I think it might be better reversed. So let's try the belt. Or not really the belt, but whatever you would call that in there. And then let's make that the darker color. And there you have it. You have a little logo pants here. And this is the version I came up with the class, and this is the one I came up with before filming the class when I was trying to figure out what logo design I should do. So that's, you can see how the one I did in the class, varies a little bit, because when you go through this process, you think through things a little bit differently. So there's the yoga pants. And so all you have to do is save this as a JPEG. You can bring it into Illustrator. You can crop it just like we did here in this particular template that I have that you can download. So that was pretty easy, and mock-ups are very, very simple. So we're going to do the next one. We're going to do a water bottle. Here we are. I have the water bottle mock-up. You can download this. You can find the link in the resources, or head over to graphicburger.com and find the mock-up there. What I love about mock-ups is they're fully customizable as long as you understand the basics of Photoshop and how layers work. So I'm going to go ahead and here's my little red layer. I can see right away that's the layer that I need to modify. So I'm going to go ahead and double click it, and you see that it has this little white kind of border on it, but I can change that however I'd like. So I'm going to double click it, and you have the entire bottle. So if you want to make a longer label, you just bring it up higher and it becomes a longer label. So you can really do whatever you want here. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of some of these, and I'm not even going to have a label because I think I'm looking for a pure clear bottle. So I'm going to go ahead and drag over my white version, center aligned, over to the mock-up. Just like the last one, these are pretty simple, and you just have to get an idea for size. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that, close it down. I'm going to save that window. It's going to automatically populate, and we have it right there. And some mock-ups give you the chance to move it around when you have the layer selected. So you can go ahead and move it around. Make that a little bit harder to do. That's okay. You just double click on your layer and just do it back into the window. Then we might want to add a little bit of a label, so water bottle or gym and spa, or something that kind of indicates what kind of bottle this is or what kind of company this is. So we're going to do that right here. You can do anything you want. You can add your own text here. So we're going to type in gym and spa. Right there I have some nice wide spacing with my typography to keep it the high-end brand look. And I'm just going to tuck it underneath there. I'm also going to make this white. So here it is applied to the bottle, and this is where we can get a chance to see how it looks on products. We can zoom in and say, okay, I need to change the balance of the logo for a particular product. You don't always have to use exactly what you produce for the logo with the words. Sometimes you have different variations that work really good on certain products. And for this case, I think I'm going to make this symbol a little bit bigger so that it can have a bigger presence when viewed from far away, which most people will be viewing the water bottles from a distance on a shelf. So you just got to keep that in mind, and this will help you come up with different variations of your logo arrangement. So this is your kind of your typical variation, and we can even think about going, okay, so now that I'm seeing it on the bottle, perhaps we do a little bit of a bigger size of the wave. And we would kind of perfect that a little bit later. So let's go ahead and replace this. Go ahead and keep gym and spa and see if this has a better look on the water bottle. So this is why I love testing out stuff on mock-ups. You get to see it practically applied and see what different kind of versions you need for the logo. You need several of them so that the client can have a lot of flexibility when applying it. Okay, so let's close it up and see how it looks. Looks a little bit better. I can go ahead and move it up here, get that center aligned, kind of zoom out. So yeah, there's all sorts of amazing things you could do. You can actually change the background here. You could even change the cap. So if you toggle this off, you could change the cap color, which is kind of cool if you wanted to change that. So I can go to image adjustments and go to maybe color balance and just kind of do some, if you're really good with Photoshop, then you'll be right at home I'm not going to focus so much on Photoshop in this class because I really want to keep it to logo design. And I'm already going a little bit further with you guys by showing mock-ups. But yeah, you could change it to however you'd like. You can just even make it black and white, just like that. And you can change the background as well. You can change the background color. You can make it black, look really kind of sleek, just like that. We can even add waves. So I'm going to go ahead and download a photo from pexels.com of some waves and get that into Photoshop. I have imported a photo I found on pexels.com, and I'm going to go ahead and make that a little bit bigger. And you could really do whatever you want with the mock-up as long as you can know Photoshop enough to kind of edit that and see. Notice how the bottle kind of shines through there. And so this, if you toggle things on and off, you can kind of see the effect it has. So there's the highlights and shadows. So we can screen this back a little bit. So we could do different blending modes up here up top. Of course, blending modes are a whole nother class, whole nother lesson. But you can kind of see how certain things can look with blending modes. And I love the newest version of Photoshop where it gives you a preview of the blending modes without having to select it. For many years, we had to select each one to find out what effect it had. Ooh, that's looking really neat. I teach a Photoshop class as well if you're interested in all these little ways to do Photoshop kind of work. So great, here we go. So there's our finished product. Kind of a great way to have a portfolio piece or to present it to the client in a much more elegant way. And it also helps you figure out, do I need to adjust the icon in certain situations? You know, a logo is not stuck forever in that arrangement. There's lots of different arrangements of logos that you can have. And so this kind of helps you figure that out. Every good logo needs to look good on a t-shirt. So we're going to do that with this t-shirt mock-up. Once again, found at graphicburger.com, but you can use any Photoshop mock-up you'd like. So we can customize colors, we can do anything. So what I thought we'd do is go ahead and start off with our red layer. I'm going to go ahead and double click that. Go ahead and remove that. So now we got to think about a t-shirt design. We might want to do a very similar kind of style and layout than the water bottle because we really want that wave to show through. So we go bring that in. We could do all white or we can do our two-tone logo. This is where we're going to test that out and see what will work best. So we're going to close that up. And there it is. We can kind of shift it around a little bit. If I go ahead and go up here to auto select and unselect that, it won't automatically select other layers. So I just went up here to auto select and unselected it. So now we can get a good idea on size and balance on the t-shirt itself. And once again, this is starting to get more into branding a little bit outside of logo design, but it's really good for presentation when you're building up that portfolio, which we're going to talk about next in the class. So now we have to figure out the right blue, but we already have some in our branded colors. So I'm just going to go ahead and select this one right here. Got a hex code. Of course, you can always use CMYK and other colors, but since this is going to be a digital mock-up, we're going to just paste that code right in there. And wow, that is bright. So now we can kind of figure out in terms of colors. It's going to show up a little bit different on the mock-up because there's highlights and shadow layers on top of it, which is going to manipulate the actual color a little bit. So if you were to get a color match a t-shirt color to that color, it'd actually be a lot darker in real life. So we're just going to adjust that just a little bit to make it a little bit darker to kind of get the right color. So kind of have a nice aqua color. Of course, we can try out different arrangements of the logo. We can go back and do the two-tone logo as well. So there you have it. You just double click this and you can change the t-shirt color. You do your red layer to be able to edit, and you could do any size, any arrangement, any symbol. There's also a back side of the t-shirt if you want to experiment with that. And there's also shadows. Just toggle any layer off to know kind of what kind of effect it's having. That's kind of making the symbol a little bit darker, but it adds a little bit more realistic shadows to it, so that's why they have that. So there we have it. We have a t-shirt, a bottle, and a couple of awesome mock-ups you can add to your portfolio. And speaking of portfolio, we're going to be doing that in the next section of the class. We have one more section to get through. We need to be able to export all of the files that we created. Let's say the client says, I love your work, let me get the files. This is going to be a little bit more of a detailed lesson. It's going to be a little bit arduous and detailed, but this is a very essential step, knowing what kind of files to send to the clients because we have a lot of different ones. If you look in Adobe Illustrator, we have all these different files. We need to get this to a client in a way that they never have to contact us again for a file. As a little bonus video, I wanted to show you how I can take this and add a little visuals to it and a little motion to, instead of having just static images, you can create a video presentation for your portfolio or your website. So in this case, it's a matter of just getting some transparent PNGs that don't have any of the backgrounds on any of these mockups or on the logo, so you can import them into your video editing software and add a video behind it. So that's what we're going to be doing here for the next few minutes, just doing this really quickly as kind of an extra bonus video. So I'm going to toggle off any kind of background that I see, so I'm just going to toggle that off. And there's like little shadows here. You can always toggle back on the background and do a very big different color here, so you can kind of see the other things you might need to remove. So there's a shadow here. Let's go ahead and remove the shadow, remove the background, and let's go ahead and add our own drop shadow to the t-shirt. So I'm just adding a little our own drop shadow so that it looks a little bit nicer. Okay, so now we have a transparent background and we can export this as a PNG. So I'm just going to export it as a PNG. And if you're not super comfortable in Photoshop, you know, I teach Photoshop classes. I teach a graphic design master class that goes through all the different classes as well. So there's a PNG ready to go. We can also do this with the logo. So we can show the logo mark and then we can overlay the, just have you saw earlier in the class, we can overlay the golden ratio circles on top of it in motion, which kind of adds a nice little characteristic to it. So I'm here in Adobe Illustrator. I just created a new artboard. What I'm going to do is I'm going to double that artboard. So I'm just going to go to Edit Artboards. I'm going to go up here to Add a New Artboard. So I just added a new artboard of the same size. And I'm just going to bring this right on over. Make sure I have both of them selected. And I have one on their own. And this is a transparent background. There's no background there. I'm exporting these as a PNG as well. I'm going to go to File, Export, and we're going to export as PNGs. We're going to go over this in the next lesson, how to export everything. So let's go ahead and export that to the desktop. So we have all of our PNGs that we want to show. We want to add a motion background. We want to add a video to it. There's a really great website called Pixabay, and that's some really cool, free to use. You can use these in client presentations. You can use them on your portfolio or website. Free videos. And I just searched for waves, and I made sure videos was selected. And I think I like this one here. It's a nice close-up tight shot. You just download it. Go ahead and download that. Resolution is fine. And I use a video editing software called ScreenFlow, and it's just for Mac right now. But they're hopefully going to have it for Windows. But you can use iMovie, you can use Window Movie Maker, anything that allows you to have layers in your videos, which is almost any video editing software. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag, let's do the logo first. I'm getting both of these files, these PNGs, together. And since they're the same size, I can go ahead and scale them down. And I'm just showing you this. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail because it's starting to get into video editing, but I'm just doing the scale and I'm just making them a little bit smaller, just like that. And we can even pop in our wave background. It'll load in our wave background and put that in the background. And then I can do some color controls. You could do this with any video editing software where you change the brightness, the color, and the saturation. You can even desaturate it a little bit. You can bring down the brightness so you can really focus in on the logo. So I'm just bringing down the brightness on that. So when we zoom in here, we're going to have these load on top of each other. And so most video editing software allow you to add layers. So we're just adding those layers on top so they'll load together. And just adding little transitions, and this is getting a little bit more into video editing than logo design. Just kind of showing you my process of kind of how I do that. So what I want to do is I want to show, this is the timeline, and I want to show my logo mark first, and then I want to overlay the golden ratio. So I'm having this go first, and I'll go ahead and play this so you can kind of see what it looks like. So there's the waves going, and then you're going to load that on top. So now kind of arranging this, I need to make them white. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that. And this is all just part of testing it out. Depends on what background you use. I'm just going to make them white now. So now they're going to be white. Export those PNGs. Going to bring in that file just how we had it before. Going to add a nice transition to it. And now we just need to line it up. Not all video editing software is going to be precise. So we need to go in and we just need to line this up to how we have it. So now it's overlaid. So now we're going to zoom back out, and we probably need to reduce the brightness quite a bit on this. And I can increase the saturation and add like almost a duotone effect, which is kind of a Photoshop effect where you use two inks. And this is just, I'm not having you guys wanting to learn all this, but I'm just kind of showing you what I do. You can use any video editing software that you want to do a lot of this. Alright, so now we're going to go back and play this and see how it looks. I'm going to do a special transition. It's called the melt transition. I'm going to go down. These are different transitions, which is effects when a certain layer loads in. So I'm just going to do a melt. It's going to have, you can kind of see what the melt effect looks like. I'm going to do a nice long slow transition too, so you can see how I'm dragging that transition out. So here's what it looks like. Let's do a nice blur effect on this one and make that nice and long. So this is what it looks like. Just took a few minutes. Not everything's going to be perfect. And of course it's a little sluggish because I'm recording at the same time, but you can kind of see the golden ratio added really slowly like that. And so it's just adding motion. I'm going to go ahead and export this because I'm recording, and so it's not showing the video in a really good resolution. So I'm going to export that and show you right now what that looks like. Just adds a little motion. You can also do the same thing with the t-shirt, and you can go ahead and add the t-shirt in there as well. And since we have a PNG, you just drag it as a layer on top, and you can have that transition nicely. So you can have a melt transition as well and have it be a nice long transition, and then zoom that out and go ahead and scale it all the way down, and then you can play. So it's going to kind of come in, see that transition, how it's coming in. And so I'll go ahead and show you the video exported since it's well, I can't record and also show this at the same time. But you can see how kind of it really adds, you know, a nice effect and presentation, especially when it comes to presenting it on a website portfolio, which we're going to get into in a few sections where we're going to talk about how to best present your portfolio, especially with logo design and video. Having a video reel and having kind of your presentations like this is really nice because you get to tell the story to somebody. All they have to do is come and they see a big video, they click on it, and they can really see the portfolio in the way you want to present it, but also in the order you want to present it. Because when you present a bunch of thumbnails, you never know which one they're going to pick on, and you want to kind of present them in the what you think is the strongest logo design. So we'll get to that later. So anyway, hopefully you enjoyed this extra bonus video. I wanted to kind of go through how I do this in video editing software. I got something really exciting for you guys. This has been requested a lot by my students, so I finally decided to put together a logo export file guide so you can have all the templates ready to go. You don't have to worry about sizing all these documents and figuring out how to export. The guide is all here for you, and we're going to be working through this throughout the next lesson or two to export all of our files in both a digital RGB environment and also a CMYK print environment. So we're going to have print files and digital files to provide for the clients in separate folders. So to open up the logo export file guide, you can find it in where you find the resources in the class. If you're on Udemy, you can find it right in the lesson. If you're on Skillshare, you can easily find that in the project section of the course where all the zip files are. So here we go. We have two different versions. There's an RGB guide, and then there's also a CMYK. We always like to start with CMYK because that's what we just finished doing our logo in, is CMYK. So we're going to just start dragging these files in, and I have them all labeled so you kind of know which one to drag in. And just a quick note, I like to leave a little bit of white space or margin when I'm loading my logos in, because when you do export these as JPEGs and PNG, if you do it all the way out to the edge, especially as a JPEG, some clients don't have that buffer zone and they'll bump that logo really close to something. So if you add a little padding and a little margin there, you can kind of show the client kind of what a proper spacing would be. So just kind of a little habit I've gotten into over the years. Well, let's get started. We're going to go to the logo presentations we did, and we have everything we need. We just have to kind of copy and paste everything and adapt it. So let's take our first ones and bring it over. And I've already kind of set those up. You can kind of see where I set them up along kind of these margins. And down here in your layers panel, I have the guides all as a separate layer. So you can just toggle that off if you don't want to have any of that mess and you just want to kind of work off of that. You can toggle that on and off. You can also just delete this layer if you want, if you don't need those guides. That's just there for kind of your help. So we're going to continue to do this. What I did is I adapted both of these, the vertical and the horizontal, and then I adapted the black and whites, and I'm just going to continue to go. So we have all 4 different kinds of presentations, which we have here. So we have a dark background, light background, single color, and black and white. So now I'm going to do the single color and bring that in. This one's a little bit challenging because, you know, you can't see it on white. So a little trick I do is I make it black and get it set up, and then I can just switch it back to white. So this will be your single color. It's always nice to have a single color option for your logo. We're just going to put it, we're not going to make it perfect, but we're just going to leave just enough margin in there so the client doesn't bump the logo right up to something. You know, you kind of have that built-in padding there for them. And we're going to go ahead and bring this one in. And you can always adjust these sizes. So let's say the margin is too big there. This is a perfect square. So if your logo has a different shape, you could just go to File, Document Setup. You just click on Edit Artboards if you ever want to add or edit artboards. And then I can change the size right up here. So this is a 6 by 6 inch square. And if you want to change the sizes of the document, say you want to use centimeters, I have this kind of written out in the guide. You go to File, Document Setup, and you just do drop down, and you could switch it to centimeters or, you know, whatever you want to do. So I have it in inches because that's what we use in the United States, but feel free to switch it to centimeters if you need to. So also if I want to change the size, we can. So let's go back up, and you could just change it and adjust it. But for right now, I'm going to leave it into the template because I just kind of did a square because you just never know all the different size logos you guys are going to create with it. We can also go back to our presentation and grab this version. And once we already have this done, exporting files is a cakewalk because you already have everything set up that you need to do. So this is for dark background, so it's going to be put on dark background, so that's why everything, the text is going to remain white because it's going to be put on the darker background, so we need to have the white text. And I have a lot of clients say they need this because they're always putting it on darker backgrounds, or they need to be able to do that. So this is a very important version to have. Okay, so we have those kind of main versions there ready to go. We can also do a watermark, which we have in our presentation already set up here. So we can get that and post that in here. Watermarks are great for letterheads and different type of things. So I have it as a nice, very light gray color. And anything that's white is going to be, that's transparent. So that'll export transparent. So they could put that in on any color, even if it's, you know, a vanilla color page. I have this background graphic, which is what I used over here in the presentation, just so they can have that as a background to use. And so I have it nice and big. I think this is 12 inches by 12 inches. And I can go always to Document Setup and Edit Artboards to check my size. So that's 12 by 12. It's a pretty large size. So when I do export that out, that's going to be very high res. Okay, so we have another section. So this section is just for the word mark or letter mark. So this is, we need to divide our symbol because sometimes they want just the symbol. Sometimes they're going to just want the typography. So we're going to be able to provide that broken down for them. So I went ahead and loaded these in. So this is going to be just the letter mark. So with this is full color, which we kind of use our gray, so that's okay. And then we have the dark background version, which we're going to want to make this white. So you're not going to be able to see it, but when you export it as a PNG, you'll be able to see it and use it. So last one is, this is for just the logo mark, and we have a full color and then also one for dark backgrounds. So once again, we can borrow from what we already have here. So this is our full color wave or crest or whatever you want to call it. We're going to put it right there. And then we can also just go ahead and copy and paste this and have this as the white. So that's going to be for dark backgrounds. So we want to have nice and light. So it's there, you just can't see it. So you can see how quickly we were able to kind of place all these on here since we already did the client presentation. We're just kind of borrowing from that and pasting it in here. So now what do? We're going to be going to File, and we're going to be exporting these in a couple of different formats. And it's going to all, since we have the artboard system, when you export it artboards, it's going to export each one of them as a separate file. So once again, if you ever want to edit this, you can edit the size. You can add a new artboard by just going to File. You're going to do, anytime you want to edit artboards, go to File, Document Setup, Edit Artboards. You can actually add new ones. Here's kind of the new artboard. You can go ahead and click on that and edit. And you notice how they all have numbers. when you can export just a certain number range. So if you only want to export artboards 1 through 5, you don't have to export the whole document each time. And that's going to come in handy when we start to export. So if you ever want to rename it, you go up here and rename it. And if you ever want to delete it, you just press the delete button and voila. So just kind of going through a little bit of how that artboard system works. Let's go ahead and export. This is for print and CMYK mode. So we always want to make sure it's CMYK. This document's already set up that way for you. And so we're going to go to File, Export. We're going to do Export As. We're going to do a couple different things. The first thing, we want to provide PNGs for everything. We always want to have that transparent background option for clients. So we're going to go ahead and click on Use Artboards. So what's going to happen when they click on Use Artboards, it's going to crop everything to the artboards all the way across. We could do all, so let's go ahead and click all, or you can do a range if you only want to do the top 8. You can do 1 through 8. So we're going to do all. We're just going to export to the desktop. I'm just going to go ahead and export. And I like to keep them at a high resolution. 300 is standard, but I like to do 600 because it increases that resolution a little bit without increasing the actual size of it. So I just like to stick with anywhere from 300 to 600. Just make sure it's higher than 300, because I have a lot of clients who put these logos and they make it really big, and they don't understand how to work with files. So if I make it bigger than I need to, if they do stretch it farther than they need to, it's not going to pixelate as much. So I'm just doing this for the client's benefit to kind of help them out a little bit, bumping that up just a little bit. And we want to make sure it's on transparent. Everything default is fine. We're going to click on OK, and it's going to take a few minutes to export all those different artboards out as PNGs. And I'll kind of show you what that looks like here in a minute. So it exports all these different files to the desktop as separate little files. And we can go ahead and look and see what we have. So you can see the PNGs here that are going to be great for the client to use. I forgot to take away that little margin, so you just make sure you remove that before you export. And I have all my little symbols here. And I like to categorize these and put them in different folders. So I'll put one in a symbol folder, a full logo folder, a color version. So create different folders for your clients so that they can have a system to kind of be able to find certain files. So this would be the CMYK folder, and then you would have an RGB folder, which is what we're going to do in the next file. So these are all the print ones. Make sure you label them as such, so CMYK or print files, so they can understand whenever they go to print something or to make a flyer or a poster, they're going to use these files. So there we have it. There's the CMYK. This makes it very simple. You don't have to sit there and size everything up. And so now we're going to open up the next file, and this is pretty much the same, but it's RGB mode. It's set up in RGB color mode. And also there's an additional social media profile image added so that you can have that. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time adapting all of these just like we did before. This is already set up in the RGB color mode, so when you drag it over, it'll automatically change those colors for you. And that's pretty much it. It's going to be the same thing. And also another thing, before we do the digital files, let's switch back to the CMYK. There's one other thing we need to do. We don't really need JPEGs because JPEGs are really used for digital. So we're going to use the JPEGs in the digital one we're getting ready to do. But we do need a vector file. You know, we sent all these PNGs, but the client always needs a good vector file of the logo. So what I'm going to do is I will remove those at another time, but I would go to File, Save As. You're just going to save this entire document as an Illustrator file. And what you could do is you can go ahead and take off all these extra things and customize it for the client. So instead of logo export file guide, you can say, you know, client logo management guide. And you can feel free to change all this so it kind of helps the designer or the client, whoever's going to be managing all the files after you're done, they can have a nice guide for them. So feel free to customize this guide, send it to your clients, make sure you change it, and you want to make sure you remove certain things and maybe put your name up there, or a contact if someone needed to contact you about how to use the logo. So just have this as the guide and kind of guide them through all of that as an Illustrator file. So you'll just need to go to File and save this whole thing as after you customize it as an Illustrator file. So right now we have this big Illustrator file to send to the client, and we also have all these PNGs that could be used for print. And the last thing we're going to do is do the JPEGs for the digital. We're also going to do PNGs for digital as well. So there's going to be a lot of files. There could be about 60 or so files. And then when we have the vectors and when they can open this up, they have access to all the vectors. And then they'll have access to all the PNGs, and which have the transparent backgrounds. And then they'll have the JPEGs, which always has a white background. So there you have it. They'll have everything they need. So let's switch over to RGB next. We're here back into the RGB mode, and we're going to do the same thing and add them all. So let's just add them all, and then of course we have the social media profile image, which is really good for Facebook, kind of that small perfect square. And so you'd go ahead and get everything ready for them, just like we just did in the CMYK mode. And now we're going to do the same thing. We're going to go to File, Export As, and we're going to do PNGs. And you might want to hand select what PNGs you think the client's going to need after you export all of them. Or you can export a range. You don't have to export everything. You can export a range of artboards. So if I want to do 1 through 5, it'll just do the first 5 artboards. And if you want to ever check what your artboard name is, go to File, Document Setup, and I know that's 1 through 5, so it would be these 5. Okay, so I'm going to export as the PNG, and also, this is a little bit different, I'm going to export as a JPEG. So I'm going to export all these as a JPEG. I'm going to export them all. And here's another thing with resolution. Standard for JPEGs and for digital environments, for web environments, is 72 ppi. That's standard, but with Retina display screens and higher resolution screens, I feel like lately I want to kind of do more of the medium. And if you can do 300, it just sends the file sizes really high. So if they're going to use this for a website, it might make file sizes that are too big for them. So, you know, you could do happy medium right here in the middle. Just look at the resolution and see how they're looking after you export it. If it's blurry, you know, you can always just do the high. So let's just do medium, and that's all we need to do. We can always lower the file size a little bit by lowering the quality. Sometimes, since this is definitely going to be used for digital, sometimes I like to lower it to maybe 8 or 9, and it just reduces that file size a little bit, which is so important when it comes to, you know, web and making sure your website loads fast. So just click OK. And now it's going to do the same thing, exporting all my JPEGs. So I would have a separate file for RGB files for print or for digital, and a separate one for CMYK, which is for print. So the client can decide, okay, I'm looking for a print file. I'm going to go into this folder, and then now I'm looking for a full color version, and they'll go into that folder, so they can kind of have their own little file system. You zip all the files up, you send it to the client, you are officially done. Go ahead and send that invoice, get paid, get your other half of your payment, and you're ready to go.